Chairman Lumpson here, if he would give us a blessing before we get started.
Thank you, Father. We thank you for this day. We thank you for your love and your goodness to us, for watching over us and caring for us. And thank you, Lord, for the many blessings that you sent our way. We thank you for the privilege that you've given to those of us who serve here, the opportunity to serve. We just ask, Lord, that you would give us your wisdom and your guidance as we seek to do the things that are pleasing to you and are in the best interests of the people of the state of Georgia. We pray these things in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen.
Okay. Today's the first hearing on fiscal year 22 amended budget. And I've changed the order. We're going to call people in just a little bit, and maybe I shouldn't have done it, but what I did was, as you pick up your tracking sheet, it's going to be in the order that you come in on the tracking sheet, so that we go, if you're following it, you can just turn the page and move forward and not skip all around. And I know a lot of you personally, and you've been here many, many times before. So when we call your agency, if you just come up to the front, sit down, and identify yourself and who you represent for those people that are on video. I would hope that we could do this fairly rapidly today. You know, it's amended budget. I don't see any unusual requests in here, maybe one or two. That most of them are vehicle requests. And I guess because of our financial situation this year, last 8 or 10 years, we've been doing them on bonds. And this year, since we're flush with cash, we're doing cash. And it's pretty much in most cases, they're just normal getting new cars to replace old ones that aren't functional anymore. So first off, I'd like to call Department of Community Supervision. Page 7, for those of you following on the tracking sheet, and there's only one item, 18.22. Which is cars.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Michael Nail, Commissioner for Department of Community Supervision. Olivia Duke is our Chief Financial Officer who's joining us. I will be brief. We're asking for favorable consideration of $2.2 million for vehicle replacements. Just real quickly, I'll let you know that the vehicles, our average vehicle fleet year is 9 years with 134,000 miles on them. These are in essence our officer's office,
right?
And have to rely on those to get the job done. And as you're very aware, they go in places that, as I told Joint Appropriations, I probably wouldn't want to take my personal vehicle.
Right. So
with that being said, sir, just addressing that on the line that you had requested, that's all I have.
Well, we appreciate you coming.
Yes, sir.
That was about as fast as anybody could do it. So we appreciate that too.
Thank you, sir.
Next is corrections. First item on page 8 is 19.8.2.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm Timothy Ward.
How are you, Mr. Commissioner?
Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Correction. I have Alan Watson, my Chief of Staff, here with me this morning. And mine is going to be a little bit longer, probably about 4 minutes, but I can't top Michael Nail. But again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And my recommendation runs on page 8 through page 9. We're going to hit 4 categories. That's the statewide recommendation for the salary increase, funding to address recruitment and retention in various programs, infrastructure recommendations, vital funding to address wireless internet and radio communication upgrades, vehicle recommendations, funding to purchase replacement vehicles at the end of their useful life, and for the transportation hubs, and also a facility transformation recommendation in accordance with the Georgia Building Authority. Okay.
Let me ask you a question first. As I was going over these, and I came to understand that the first one is 19.8.2.
Mm-hmm.
It says provide funds for 72 vehicles for regional offender transportation hubs, and I understand the hub concept. I was unaware of it until we started dealing with this budget. But my understanding was you asked for 39 vehicles and OPB offered you 72.
Well, with those regional hubs, it's also to build sally ports for the counties and the sheriff deputies to drive in, because we don't want to make sure having secure location.
Sure.
So that's what we're recommending, that they're doing that, as far as doing that.
72 vehicles?
Yes.
No, it
No,
would be
but
39 vehicles.
39
and some
vehi-
buildings.
and some buildings.
I don't know how they got to 72.
I don't either, but that's certainly, and I haven't divided the money up, but that could very well skew the total amount of money that's involved in this. So I'll have to go back and check that,
We
but
can
you want,
send-
you
we
want
can send you the
39.
breakdown. We can send you the breakdown
Okay.
of how we came up with the total
Are
figure.
we gonna meet this afternoon on that?
Okay.
Yes, sir. We moved, I think we at 1:30.
We can bring it to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, the first, excuse me, first with
Whose
state.
idea was the Sally Port? I mean, the hubs. I thought that was a good idea. and the
Well, one of the
sheriff can-
things, well, it was a compromise with the Sheriff's Association. You
Okay.
know, every year the deal comes up whether or not we should directly go to the sheriff's office and pick them up. It's an interpretation of the law, and this is a good compromise. I think it helped both everyone by creating regional hubs. That sheriff, they can drop them off at a regional hub and get back into their county and patrol their county. So it's a great compromise.
Okay, I thought so too.
Yeah, great compromise. Can you go to slide 3, please? Okay. Slide 3 shows, starting out with tracking number 19.2.1 through 19.1.1. That's the $5,000 pay increase for all of our employees. So that total recommendation is a little bit like $40,162,541 for that salary increase. Next slide, please. Next slide, you'll see our infrastructure recommendations. That's tracking number 19.8.3. That's 5.5 million for wireless upgrade statewide. This will allow us to increase from 20 megs to 100 megs statewide, increasing the ability to roll out technology to enhance safety and security while supporting retention for our correction officers. Tracking number 19.8.5.
Let me ask you about 3. My understanding is you already completed 17 of the facilities.
Yes.
And, you're to the point now where you don't have any ability for wireless infrastructure in most of the other sites. Is that correct?
Yes, and this will give us that.
This finishes it out.
Yes, finish it out,
Okay.
sir. And then you'll see in tracking number 19.8.5, that's 23 million to upgrade the radio system statewide. That upgrade radios that are at the end of their useful life, and that will outfit every facility, every officer, and every vehicle with new radios. And that's 23.8 million. And the total infrastructure recommendation is $29,389,297. Next slide, please. Next, you'll see, like we talked about, Mr. Chairman, the vehicle recommendation that's tracking 19.8.2 to 5 million to purchase the buses and vehicles for the transportation hub. And then down, you see tracking number 19.8.4 is 4 million just to replace the 107 GDC vehicles that are past their useful life. And that's a total ask of $9,192,800 for vehicle recommendations. Next slide, please. And next is the facility transformation recommendations. The governor understands the challenges our aging infrastructures has heard our concerns. In coordination with the Georgia Building Authority and the State Properties Commission, funding has been allocated to purchase an additional facility and begin construction of a new facility. The construction of this new facility will focus on increasing officer efficiency, updating technology, and creating a safe environment for both the staff and the offenders while promoting staff retention. And in the amended budget, he's put $432,500,000 in there for that recommendation for that facility design. Next slide, please.
Let me ask you about, I was searching for that in the budget because I couldn't find it anywhere. And I knew the governor stated state address, that he was spending 600 million in corrections. And I asked one of your cohorts this morning where that money was, or in fact, it was coming. And he told me it's in GBA, but I know for other entities, it's often in their budget. Any special reason for that?
Well, and Anna can jump in too, but I think it was put with GA, but because I can move money forward if that move
That's
money
right,
Okay.
because it was
Okay.
cash and they can carry it from year to year.
from year to year. So that's why we did that. So no trickery there. Okay. And so the total ask in the amended FY22 budget for us, excluding the GBA bill, is $78,744,638. Okay. And that concludes my presentation, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up's DOD. I saw him out in the hall and then, well, they probably knew you were gonna be in here, Al. So I've been in here several times on the other side, but come on up, General, and introduce yourself and your staff for the cameras and.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Hitchens, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Major General Tom Carden. I'm the senior servant in your National Guard. I'm accompanied today by Mr. Joe Ferrero, the Deputy Adjutant General, Mr. Kenley Finlayson. He's our State Financial Director for Georgia DOD. As you know, the 15,000 men and women in your National Guard have been getting after it. We continue, I believe, to do pretty good work for the state nation. I'm proud to be here to represent them today. In terms of our adjusted budget for fiscal year 22, we have only 2 recommendations, both of which are included in Governor Kemp's budget proposal. You'll find at 20.2.2 under military readiness on page 27, $3,845,000 for more demolition work at the former Lorenzo Ben Youth Detention Center in Fulton County. This effort will give us an expansion opportunity as we continue to compete for force structure and capability in the Georgia Department of Defense. At 20.2.3, also under military readiness, also on page 27, you'll find $63,837 for the operational cost associated with the bowling building in Milledgeville. This was formerly the third Youth Challenge campus for our program. When the pandemic hit us in 2020 and the budget cuts came across the board, we had to shutter that campus based on that. But we still maintain that facility. It's currently being utilized as a backup COVID hospitalization facility if we need it to provide some swing space for COVID patients. But we need to maintain that facility because it's going to give us an opportunity to house additional force structure and capability as we move down the road. And that's what that's for. We certainly appreciate all your support and stand ready to answer any questions you might have.
And that's just the 63,000. That's just maintenance and utilities,
Yes, sir.
keep the thing going.
Yes, sir. That's just to kind of keep the roof from falling in
And
on
the
it.
other is the YDC that was on your property and you're
That's-
trying to rid yourself of that. And
Yes, sir.
that's a little more expensive. but-
It's quite a bit of acreage and about 27 buildings, I think, that was on that property. And obviously the demolition effort there will help us. We've even had, folks, kind of squatters go in and try to live there and drug activity and that kind of thing. So being good neighbors and additionally that swing space, again, gives us an opportunity because we can expand a little bit when force structure becomes available. We can compete for that force structure and have a place to house it.
Okay, and it wouldn't be an official meeting if Al Williams didn't have a question.
I knew it was breaking your heart that my light didn't light up, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to hurt you early. But Daryl, thank you, and thank your staff. Thank you all for what you do. Question about the Milledgeville campus. Based on where you are now and looking in the future, do you see at any point reactivating that as a youth challenge or just using the existing youth challenge campuses in the future?
Well, Representative Williams, thanks for that question. And to give you a solid answer on that, it'd be very difficult. What we found at that third campus is we had literally outkicked our punt coverage, if you would, in terms of being able to get the kids in there, recruit the staff that we needed to be able to be as efficient as we needed to be. That became our least efficient campus. That's why it was the first one on the cut list when we had to cut the budget. What we're doing right now, we're basically with COVID mitigation, I actually feel like we're actually doing a little bit better with the 2 campuses we have versus trying to expand. So there may be a time in the future where, based on our student population and the demand signal we get from the state of Georgia, where we may need to go back to that. I don't see that happening in the near term.
Thank you.
And I've heard you're not getting as many applications for, I don't know whether it's COVID or what's going on, but
I think COVID's part of it. And I think another piece is a lot of these kids that come to this campus. I mean, we see them as volunteers, but in reality, they're getting voluntold by a parent or a grandparent to come to Youth Challenge. I mean, not a lot of them are going to enroll themselves in a 5-month
residence structured in military type environment. And a lot of them see it a little bit different by the time they graduate, but they're not eager on day one.
Any other questions from any of the committee members? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next up is GMA. Page 11. Anybody here from GMA? I'll read it off. The only item I had was 27.5.2, provide one-time funds for retirement and leave payouts. My understanding is the deputy director is retiring, and I hope some others are retiring too, because they wanted 91,000 for him to for his annual leave, and having done that twice myself, I know that's a little unusually high. So, but anyway, it's $91,119, and we'll move on. Anybody got any questions over that?
I think that might be why he didn't come. He knew you were gonna ask that question.
Moving on to the GBI.
Morning, Colonel. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Vic Reynolds, the director of the GBI. With me is Ms. Connie Buck. She's our CFO, and Mr. John Melvin, who is sitting to my right, who is assistant director. We have three items, Mr. Chair, beginning on section 30, page 12 of your tracking document. The first is 30.3.2. Those are providing funds to replace and improve laboratory equipment. We have some older equipment, liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry equipment. I'd respectfully ask you not to ask me to repeat those. I probably had it in me one time. I don't think I can say it twice. But the life of that equipment, they were installed between 2011 and 2014, and they've just worn out. And so Governor has graciously recommended replacing those. The second item is 30.4.2. That's the replacement of the vehicles. Most of those are investigator vehicles, although there are some bomb squad tech vehicles, a bomb response vehicle, and 2 crime scene response units in that as well. That's the most sizable item in the amended 22 budget. And the third and last item is 30.4.3. That's providing funds for 2 temporary and 2 full-time positions and associated costs regarding the investigation of election complaints. I would remind the committee respectfully that GBI does not have any jurisdiction in those matters. However, we're occasionally asked to assist in those, and so because of that, there's been a request for monies to provide those funds in the event they're needed.
I certainly had a question for that last one. I've never known of a temporary position in a GBI, how you have a special agent that goes through school and gets fully trained, and then you don't offer him a full-time job. My suspicion is I thought we probably ought to ask for 4 full-time positions and have 4 people that were ready to go, because, and the reason we typically don't do manpower employment funding in the supplemental budget, but this is primary is going to be before the full budget goes into play. So,
Yes, sir.
But my recommendation is going to be that we put 4 in there.
I think that's a good idea.
And I know you're going to use older people that are already involved and replace
Yes, sir.
them with new people, but I still don't know how you use somebody part-time.
I think that would put us in a difficult position to look to somebody across the table and tell them it was for a certain period of time. It'd be
Right.
difficult to do that.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all
Thank
we
you.
have. Oh, wait a minute. Number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to touch on that last piece as well. If it were to become that the GBI had the original jurisdiction for elections complaints, is 4 going to be enough to handle the load that you've seen recently?
I think if we're speaking in hypotheticals, if the GBI was given either original, exclusive, or even concurrent jurisdiction with other agencies, that based on what I've seen, it would be difficult to respond to the number of complaints with 4 individuals. Yes, sir.
Do you have an idea how many people it would take, or is it just so insurmountable to the point that we couldn't determine what the number of people to handle the current complaints are?
Well, I think based on my conversations with our Deputy Director of Investigations, he is recommended to me, he would put a squad together, probably closer to 10 agents, 2 analysts, those numbers. Now, again, that depends on some certain issues which are difficult to get your hands around. For example, if we were given concurrent jurisdiction with another agency where we would be assisting those agencies, it may not take that many. If we were given exclusive jurisdiction where we were the only show in town doing it, then obviously it would take more folks to do it that way.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern, Mr. Director, and thank you for the job you're doing.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. You've taken down a lot of backlog and a lot of things that have moved us forward. Are we starting to stretch a little thin, taking you out of all? Every morning I see another policeman shot or something, your real mission. Now we got you at the ballot box. Aren't we kind of stretching it? Shouldn't we be looking at Secretary of State's office, somebody else with investigators? You don't have to answer it like I've asked it, but it doesn't seem crime is not going down, but we're stretching you out in another area where it's very unlikely there'll be a stick-up man at the box.
I'm going to sit here, Mr. Chair.
And my assistant here brought up a good point. You know, if you're going to use existing agents and you're going to have to run others through school, wouldn't that be an additional expense? You know, I know you don't, you lock them up for 4 months down there. It costs the state a pretty good bit amount of money to maintain them and train them. And
Yes, sir. Yeah, if we, you know, again, and I speak somewhat in hypotheticals because I have to deal with what we're looking at today. And in today's world, we don't have jurisdiction. But if I'm
Right.
speaking hypothetically, and we do, then the reality is the agents that we would put on a squad or a unit of that nature would be folks who are already in the GBI, who experienced agents, and it would result in newer ones going to an academy, to a basic agent
Right.
class. Yes, sir.
And given the situation we find ourselves in today, I think it's very, we're looking forward to probably seeing that there'll be an overture to give you that authority. I think people on both sides of the aisle certainly are interested in fair and elections and want to make sure that every vote's counted and that somebody has oversight.
Yes, sir.
So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Juvenile justice.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Good to be before you all again today. Here with me is our CFO, Stephen Carter-Williams, and our Deputy CFO in the back, Christopher Lampley, and our Budget Director, Latrina Lyons. Just draw your attention to your tracking sheet really quickly. It's 31.1 point. It's our community service budget. As you all know, the $5,000 increase of all full-time employees it's a huge benefit for all state agencies, but especially the Department of Juvenile Justice, but not only for our JCOs, but all employees there. And that's going to be throughout all programs. I'll draw your attention to 31.12 is transfer of funds from secure detention to provide a 20% salary increase for our juvenile program managers to provide parity with previous salaries adjustments. As I stated in the joint committee, those probation officers, the managers, they run our probation office. And then when the 20% increase went into effect for all certified employees some years back, they didn't get it.
Last year, I believe it was, we increased it up. And my understanding is now the employees make more than the supervisors.
Absolutely. Anywhere between, $14,000 to $18,000 more. And so I'm transferring that funds to budget neutral, taking out secure detention and providing that additional 20% to those program managers. Next on the item is the increased funds for the RBWO oversight for the loss of Title IV funding. That's the reimbursement funds. Traditionally, historically, DJJ's carried over those federal funds. As you know, it's a reimbursement. And so just to make the books clean and making sure that we're
complying with those standards, we're recommending that funding so we don't have to use federal funds to fund that year and then ask. and then
My
reimburse them.
understanding on those Title IV funds on both these items, 31.13 and 4 is what happened is you're using the federal funds and they cut out the state fund. Now the federal funds have gone away, so we have to go back and refund it with state money.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then down the administration budgets, also 31.2.2 is transfer of funds from secure detention again to fill vacancies to increase salaries. And that's our lapse factor that we had on there. It's about anywhere between, I think, 15 positions in our administration budget to help assist onboarding staff and the critical missions of the administration and of the department. So again, that's a transfer from our secure detention. So we're not asking for
But
any
it's for
funding there.
positions that can't be filled. So it-
Absolutely.
you
Yes, sir.
move that money up and it just evens up.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't cost any
Yes, sir.
additional money.
Yes, sir. And I yield the floor to any questions. I think that's going to be about it. Same thing with secure detention. It's just showing that transfer from secure detention to the community service and administration budget.
That's all I have. Number 6, Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I remember from your testimony before the joint committee that you said that for the JCOs, you have turnover now of 90%, which is down from 97%.
Correct.
There's no organization on the planet for which that's sustainable.
No.
So in addition to just these increase of funds, what data, what reviews are being done and gathered to understand why people are leaving? Is the job just awful and people can't stand it and they say, screw this, the money's not worth it? Like, what are the factors? Because that is an extraordinarily high turnover rate.
And let me just say, and that's a good question, sir. I think, and that's just our JCO 1 and 2 series. So it's
Right.
not the entire
I understand.
series. And we did 2 surveys. We did one last year and we just got the data back from the survey we just completed several months ago. It came back 2 days ago, 2 days ago. And looking at it, the number one reason why, and we do exit interviews as well, but the number one reason why people leave, we surveyed about 1,700 employees that actually participated in the survey. And the number one reason why they say they're leaving is because of the pay.
Okay.
And that's overwhelmingly the case throughout their survey. And so, and you can see the strides with the 10% increase that we provided last year. I think that's the driving force for that 7% decrease. They see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think with this $5,000 increase, we're going to continue to do that. But also, it's the culture and the environment in which we work. It's
Right.
it's a difficult job for those JCOs and anybody working behind the wire for that matter. There's certain things that when the juvenile settings that, we cannot do, and as far as holding youth accountable, that act out, that our sister agency or brother agency can do at DOC. And so it makes the job a little bit more difficult for those employees coming in. But the data, going back to the data from the survey, is directly related to pay.
Does anybody provide you with the number at which it would make a difference? In other words, are people saying if it was 35,000, 40,000, 45,000? Because my question basically is hinting at, is 5,000 going to be enough, or are we still going to have these extremely high turnover rates?
Well, I would caution you to say that, I think, the $5,000 is a step in the right direction. I think it makes us competitive to our counterparts in the municipal and the counties. I think I testified before this committee last year that Rockdale County was starting somewhere around 40,000. Well, now that JCO 1's coming in at 35, after they complete their training, they're just shy of 40. I was looking online, the city of Canton Police Department starting out police officers at 38. And so now it makes us competitive, but it's still, we have to do a better job at DJJ, and we have been on the culture. You could pay somebody $5,000 a day and if the job is difficult, they're going to leave.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that, money is a factor, but I don't think it's going to really solve our issues. We got to find the right fit of people that want to come in and do this job. We've tweaked our job description to kind of let the applicant know exactly what they're getting into. And then we're just telling, just doing a good job of telling the story, letting them know exactly what this job entails and what they can do. And I think that's one of the driving forces too, for that turnover rate dropping to 7%.
Right. If they see purpose in what they're doing, and if it is an extraordinarily important job, and we want them to be successful as the state, we want them to be successful. We want them to help turn these kids around. So they don't wind back up in the same place, either as juveniles or as adults. And so we definitely appreciate their hard work, but that turnover rate, we have to get it way, 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 way down.
Yes. And, again, I think, Testament, we're doing a good job, 7% in 1 year. I know it's still high at 90, but our overall turnover rate for the agency dropped 5%. And so not only are we making strides on that JCO series, but we're making strides across the agency as well, throughout all departments. The focus is really on, the JCO because it is a high turnover rate, but, we have our own school system. We're losing teachers to the private sector now because, of course, they have that ability to go in and teach virtually through some systems. And so, that turnover rate increased a little bit from last fiscal year. And so our social services, our mental health. But again, they have that option to go out in the private sector and do their job remotely. Where we've seen a decrease is about our JCOs and our food service workers. When we gave that 10% increase, our food service workers, who were the lowest, they were at like $17,000, $18,000 a year, are now getting up anywhere between 24,000 with this 5,000. So we're getting a step in the right direction, and that turnover rate's dropped as well.
Yeah.
But we're seeing a lot of people leaving us the flexibility in the private sector that they have, to do virtual options or things of that nature. So, I think we're just coming up with some innovative ways for those who are not essential employees to have that flexibility.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll tell you what we've done in the past, and I know for a lot of people that aren't involved in criminal justice environments for many years, we've set up committee visitations and gone to some of the YDCs, and you don't get the full complexity of what goes on in 45 minutes or an hour traveling through there, but you get a hint of why maybe people wouldn't want to work there on a full-time basis. And it's difficult, and sometimes it can be pretty scary. I mean, it's some of our youth today are pretty can be pretty violent, and just because you put them in youth detention center doesn't mean they stop. They just do it to each other and the staff. And but if we have enough people interested, I'd be glad to set it up and take a group into YDC and look around and see what actually goes on and talk to the staff and see what they think. Sometimes certainly the commissioner has a good idea, but sometimes you talk to the people on the line, you get a different perspective, and they're the ones that are quitting and leaving.
And there are a lot of committed people that work there. But just to your point, Mr. Chairman, our Metro RYDC population, currently we have somewhere around 80 youth there today, and over 50% of that population is SB 440 cases. They're very violent offenders. I think out of our last year or this current fiscal year, this past calendar year, I think we had somewhere upwards around like over 600 SB 440 kids statewide that came through our system. But at Metro alone, I mean, over 50% of those kids are facing adult charges. I mean, they're pretty violent offenders, and that's across the board, especially after reform efforts. We're seeing more violent youth, more older youth are staying with us a lot longer, and so it makes it difficult.
And it's very expensive for the taxpayers of the state too. I haven't checked on it lately, but several years ago, it cost about $30,000 a year to maintain a state prisoner. An adult costs about $100,000 a year to maintain somebody in YDC because of the education, health, and all the other criteria that are federally mandated.
About $120,000 per child per year.
Yeah. Okay, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like your idea of going out because believe me, you can talk to a general and you hear one perspective, go talk to a PFC and Spec 4 if you want to see what's really happening.
Absolutely.
Have you done, and I don't expect this morning, but I wish you would supply it to the chairman where he could supply it to us. What is your strategic plan to reduce this? Realistically, what is your long range 5-10 year? Because the crime's not going away. And you can't sustain 90% against 97% means, we move from old sparky to injection, you still die. So would you just share that strategic plan with him on how you're going to handle this?
I wish I had a strategic plan here, but we do have it's in our strategic plan to reduce by 2024 our turnover rate by 8%. I mean, we did that
Then we'll be the 88. huh?
It would be 88. It's still high. But looking back at previous annual reports from the agency prior to me getting here, every commissioner was dealing with the exact same thing. Probably wasn't as high, but every commissioner was dealing with that high turnover rate. But I think this is a step in the right direction with the governor's recommendations with the $5,000 increase. I know we hadn't got to the big budget yet, but another thing with to be able to withdraw that 40 hours of annual leave will help. That's a bonus that the employee can be able to, pick and choose when they want to take it of pay. And so, but when you talk to the employees, and you look at our data and you talk to them, the main reason why they leave on the exit interviews and the current employees who are still there is low salaries.
You're gonna turn all that around, Commissioner. Be a long time. You might even go some here by the time.
Exactly. And see, most of the hair that I have is getting a little gray. But I think the men and women at the department, we do a phenomenal job. Of course, we have to just keep that culture going and making sure we create a culture to where the men and women want to come to work. And that shows, especially during this pandemic over the last 2 years, because they still showed up. They didn't have to. Everybody's hiring, but the ones that came, they showed up and they still are committed to serving the youth and serving the state of Georgia.
Chairman Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Oliver, thanks for coming today and presenting. I just wanted to tag on something that Representative Holcomb was talking about. Have you had any conversations? What I hear a lot is at the point when we had the state benefit plan that was offered to the Department of Corrections, they've told me that was a huge carrot for folks, to work in the environment that they're in. They have sort of this, light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, to a retirement to count on. Have you had any conversations with the JCOs about that? Has that played into any of this? Do you know?
And talking to some of them, I think I pulled the data a while back, and I think I may have it. Some of our JCOs, not a lot, but they're not even partaking. They're opting out of the state benefits plan because they simply couldn't afford it. But I think we had 192 of JCO of correctional officers as of September of last year who didn't even participate in the state benefits plan because they simply couldn't afford it. But I think it's now it's going to be an option. We do put that out there. POAB did a good job now of including correctional staff to be able to participate in that program. But it's just making sure it's making it affordable. But then you got to think about too the working class that's out there and they're not worried about benefits at that point. So we just got to make sure that we're making the job appealable so that so they can stay a little bit longer with us, and then hopefully, provide those benefits. We have lunch and learns, we put things out, social media, through email to advise them of that, but we just got to make sure we just get them that point to stay there.
I recall the conversation you and I had about this. The folks that are entering into these JCO 1s and 2s, they're young and they're not concerned about their long-term retirement plans at the time. But if we get them over, say, 5-10 years, then they start thinking about that and moving into it. And at one time didn't we have a defined benefits plan years ago?
Still do.
We do. Okay.
But and I'll tell you, back when it was changed, I found myself through 3 different retirement systems in state government. And the first one was that if you stayed for 34 years back in my generation, you got 90% of your best 30 days.
That's the one that I was talking about, referring to.
We had 90% retention. People that graduated from trooper school, 90% of them retired.
And even
then the second one was 2%, same as teachers. And that went out, I think, in 1997. And now it's 1% plus up to 3% that you can contribute to a 401. Well, if you're not making anything, 3% of nothing doesn't add up to very much. And it's going to be upgraded this year to 9%.
Yeah.
But the ability to retain people in state government after they changed the retirement system from 2% to 1% skyrocketed. I mean, in all agencies, we can see it right here with our administrative assistants. I mean, people just don't stay like they used to. They used to stay 30, 35 years. And you lose a lot of institutional knowledge and people that have been around for a long time, and they make a career of it. This is where they want to be. But if they can't see the way clear, and there are other opportunities. There's so many opportunities now for people that they just, I don't think I'm on my 8th or 9th secretary since I've been here. So.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very interested in making a trip to any facility with the committee. Commissioner Oliver gave me a tour of the facility in Ware County, and like you said, Representative Williams said, you get a feel for what the day-to-day trials and tribulations are for these folks, and frankly, I know Commissioner Oliver is talking about sort of changing the institutional nature into sort of a campus type nature, so these kids, don't get institutionalized. And so I think that's a good effort, and I'm willing to come anywhere we go. Thank you, Commissioner Oliver.
Yeah, that's we'll set it up. I don't know what's a good, probably after we get out of session, certainly, but try and make it up maybe somewhere in the middle of the state so everybody can attend. Last time I went down to Jackson, I guess it was, but I've been to 3 or 4 of them, and you have to look at it from the other side too. These people that are incarcerated there don't want to be there. Most of the time they don't come from a good environment, and they see little hope in their future, and I mean, that certainly has an impact on how they look at their status and what they think about where they are and what their cooperation level is going to be. And so it's a difficult problem. When I first started in the state government, there wasn't a juvenile justice department. It was.
Stagecoach bringing us here, wasn't it?
Well, you were driving. That's all we've got.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the job you do.
Thank you.
Judge. Is that
Well,
you?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how about your facilities? Are they all squared away with good repair, that kind of thing? Any needs you have in that area?
I think, yeah, we've had some needs, and it's in our big budget. We're facing the same thing, something similar with DOC's facing with aging infrastructure. But our staff, they do a good job. CGL does a good job with that. 12 of our facilities, 12 out of 25 facilities are ACA accredited. And so they have to meet those national standards where they look at the physical plan of the facilities. And so, but we're constantly upgrading them and putting money into them. And we inherited a lot of the old DOC facilities that in the past. And so it's just trying to, work our way out of that. We have a strategic plan for that as well. But of course, everything depends on funding and getting out of those older facilities and making it more conducive to juvenile justice.
And is it adequate for the inmate numbers that you have?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, I caution you, some of them, we have those 30-bed facilities down in Thomasville. I think they're full. Waycross is full. Crisp is 48. They're almost at capacity. We're at capacity in Columbus, where we're on our male side. So we're putting some males over into the female side. We don't have any females there in Aaron Cone right now in Columbus. And so our smaller facilities in some of the rural counties are full. They're at capacity today.
Are you aware of any waiting lists in counties around the state?
We take them. Yeah, there's no waiting list. So when the local jurisdictions may have to drive a little bit further to bring them to us, but we don't have a waiting list. So we have to take them whenever they come in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And last but not least is DPS.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Morning.
I'm Colonel Chris Wright. I'm the Commissioner at the Department of Public Safety. And with me this morning is Lieutenant Colonel Hitchens, the Deputy Commissioner. Thank you and the committee members this morning for the opportunity to speak with you on behalf of all of the members of the Department of Public Safety.
Right.
We're committed to working closely with
to the
you in
same
a
budget.
transparent and responsive manner. Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the contributions made by each of our employees. While the mission of our agency must always remain our first and foremost priority, we cannot achieve that success without our employees. Their commitment, courage, and professionalism are unparalleled. whether on the front lines or behind the scenes, each are critical to keeping Georgia safe. I provided y'all this morning with a summary of kind of what our activity has been for the year 2021. It'll give you a bird's eye view of some of the accomplishments throughout the year. Moving on to our amended fiscal year 22 budget, Mr. Chairman, please refer to House Budget Tracking Sheet for that fiscal year budget, section 39. The Department of Public Safety fully supports the governor's recommendation for amended fiscal year 22, which includes funds for a $5,000 pay increase across all programs totaling $6.8 million. We believe this pay increase will be very impactful for each of our employees and will be a major step in helping our agency recruit and retain our workforce. Mr. Chairman, thank you, Governor Kemp, and all of our legislators for supporting the fiscal year 22 bond funding for our new headquarters project. We broke ground in August and construction is well underway. We support line 39.3.2 of the governor's amended fiscal year 22 recommendation of $6.6 million for FF&E for the new headquarters project. The anticipated completion date is January 17th, 2023. We support the governor's amended fiscal year budget recommendation on line 39.4.2 for $12 million in one-time funds to purchase 314 vehicles. These funds will allow our agency to replace existing vehicles and equipment within our fleet. And in closing, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say since 1937, the Department of Public Safety has had a reputation of getting the job done. We have a rich tradition of remaining very focused on our mission, and whether it's fighting crime in Atlanta, responding to natural disasters such as tornado ravaged communities, escorting brine and salt trucks, moving elderly from an assisted living center that lost power during a snowstorm, or delivering supplies during a pandemic, to extracting injured from a mountain, Georgians can be assured there's no task too small or too large for the Department of Public Safety. On March 19th of this year, the Department of Public Safety will be celebrating 85 years of dedicated service to our great state. And it's my honor and pleasure to congratulate each of our employees on this tremendous occasion and milestone. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation on our amended fiscal year budget.
What about section 39.7.2? I'm unfamiliar. This is something that's happened since I've left, but the fireworks excise tax collections. That's on firefighters. That's, excuse me, that they all come under you,
I thought you were
firefighters,
gonna give me
and
something
Public
new
Safety
there.
Training Center. No. When I looked at it, I said, what in the world is that in their budget? But as you
Yes,
know,
sir.
well, there are several other agencies that come under DPS budget.
Yes.
For, that's it. Whoop. Chairman.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to personally take the opportunity to thank Commissioner Wright and your staff and your patrolmen for exceeding the expectations that we have and continuing to do a fantastic job for the state of Georgia. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Up, here we go again.
It's not me.
Oh,
Charlie.
When I see it blinking, I think it's you automatically, but Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Commissioner. Can you give a couple of details I'd like to explore? Is one, how is retention in your agency?
We're currently sitting on a 15% agency-wide turnover rate, which is down from about a 20% turnover rate. And that's agency-wide. That includes civilians and sworn personnel.
Okay. Is there a part of the agency where it's higher, or is it pretty consistent across fields?
It is higher in our communications division. That is the highest turnover rate right now. We're competing with 911 centers
They're last
across
in the
the
country. They
state.
always
911 centers pay their employees more than what we've been paying. We were able to just this past fiscal year, our manpower with our communication centers was down tremendously, and we took the opportunity to sort of reduce the number of personnel that we were putting in our radio rooms, and took those funds and gave our personnel a 10% pay increase to help us with some of that recruiting and retention. And I think with the governor's recommendation of the pay increase will help us tremendously with that.
Okay. And then the other question is, I see on line 39.4.2, the replacement of 314 vehicles. That's probably a pretty large proportion of your fleet, correct?
It is. What we try to typically do is replace a quarter of our fleet every year. That keeps us in good vehicles, good working order. The vehicles, clearly in our profession, they take a beating
Yes.
with the job that we're required to do. So this sort of keeps us in a good fleet because we don't need our people in vehicles that are not safe out on the roadways.
Okay. Great.
What's the trooper count now? Uniform.
Sitting on 769 on the trooper side, about 230 on the motor carrier side.
And I probably shouldn't run off, but I come from that agency and we had 700 troopers when I went through in 1969, 4.5 million people in the state of Georgia, and the interstate system wasn't complete. And we fast forward now many, many years, and we've added 50 people, and our population has gone from 4.5 million to 11 million. And before I left, I know that we came in last in the country, number of troopers per capita. We had eight troopers for every 100,000 people when the national average was 24. So if we were to come up to just the national average, we would have to triple our size. We have 750. South Carolina has over 1,000. They have 4.5 million people. Louisiana has over 1,000. North Carolina's got 2,000. Florida's got 2,000. And I don't know what it's the reason for all that. It's just always been that way. And I don't think every year I watch it, the death count every year start to go back up, and it just seems to revert back to being something that's not first priority. And
Yes. Well, the competition is certainly very high in the law enforcement profession right now. What we're seeing across the nation is people are already speaking about raising their salaries because it is so
Right.
competitive. Just this week, the Arizona Department of Public Safety is in the city of Savannah recruiting right now this week. And they're boasting at 6 years in, their troopers will be making $91,000 a year. So, we had a meeting here just a couple of weeks ago with all the Southern colonels, and all the states around us, we're talking about pay increases because it is that competitive. And, out of the top 10 most populous states, 3 of those states are right here and 2 of them touch us. And that's North Carolina and Florida, obviously. And both of them are talking about substantial pay increases because everybody is fighting for the same resources, and that's manpower. And it's very difficult right now because a lot of people are not interested in this profession. And, I tell people all the time, the days of us paying law enforcement officers $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, I think those days are gone. That's a thing of the past. It's hard work. It's dangerous work. And I think looking into the future, if we're going to fix our recruiting and retention, we have to pay people. And just like y'all discussed earlier with Commissioner Oliver, retirement is a huge issue. We historically can look back and see, just like Chairman Hitchens talked about, when we had a 34-year, 90% retirement, and we didn't see the turnover rate. So, we can look back in the past and see what worked and try to look to the future to see what changes we need to make, because clearly the direction that we have went, in the past 10, 12, 15 years has been the wrong direction when it comes to recruiting and retention.
what really concerned me was, in my era, everybody wanted to migrate from cities and counties to the state. Now I see it moves a lot in the other direction, where many troopers that we send to school for 7 months and train, put on 2 years, and then they go to some local agency because they pay more.
Yes.
So, Representative Williams.
Thank you, my ex-colonel, but don't answer this, Colonel, because it's not politically correct. But I've been around a few years, and I notice our folk have all of these glowing speeches about the support for the boys in blue, and let's do what we can for law enforcement until it gets time to appropriate money for real salaries. Then we get quiet until we need them again, and that's unfortunate. If you got folk coming from Arizona, saying in 5 or 6 years, you can make $91,000. There's gonna be some boys possibly out of Little Whiskey who are gonna learn how to ride a horse in Arizona. And until we realistically start dealing with pay in this state, we're headed for catastrophe, and there's no way in the world to justify a 50 trooper change in all those years when we've tripled our population. So I'm fed up with the hand on the heart and the tears. And then when it comes time to put rubber where the road is, missing an action with dabs. It took forever to get that big raise a few years ago. It's like pulling teeth, but everybody loves the guys in blue until we say, how about a substantial pay raise?
Chairman Burchett.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I often don't.
My colleague from Hinesville sometimes don't agree with, but I do agree with him here. We need to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. The question I have is, where are our troopers at after 6 years? I mean, how much do they make?
So I can give you the exact number of 6 years where we are. So at about 6 years, a trooper first class 3 is the milestone that they are reaching at that point, is $63,000 a year.
Arizona's paying $30,000 more a year for the same position.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
I think that's all we have, and I'm not trying to hurry things along, but rules started at 9 o'clock. I think just about everybody in here is on rules, so
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
we've still got the Public Safety Training Center, so we're not gonna forget about it. I'm gonna stay. I'm on rules too, but I'll be here, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir.
I know it make you feel bad when your turn, everybody leaves.
That's okay. I'm used to it, sir. All right, I'll be quick, Mr. Chairman, committee members, and I want to thank you for taking your time today to allow us to present. I echo some of the same messages from the colonel at the training center. I know you spent a lot of time there. And if you look at the numbers of students we've had historically, from 40 to 50,000 students a year, we've been well over 200,000 students for the last 6 years.
Yep.
With a lot of out-of-state personnel coming to get training here in Georgia. So we've got a gym that a lot of people don't realize we've got here. We support the governor's budget. Same thing with our retention. We have about an agency-wide 15 to 20% turnover rate. So the $5,000 pay increase would help us retain and hire individuals at the organization. That is 39.9.1 in the track book. 39.9.2 would provide 8 additional vehicles for us to replace. It's got the mileage in there as well. One of them's over 10 years old. The other 7 are over 11 years old. And then 39.9.3 would help us replace a backhoe that we use. And a lot of people ask why we need heavy equipment.
High-speed track, huh?
High-speed track, and we're the center's over 30 years old now, so we're having some sewer and water lines break that we're trying to repair internally and save the state a little bit of money, but we've got to have the proper equipment to do those repairs. And with that, that would conclude the presentation. Opened up any
questions? Okay, that concludes our meeting today, and everybody can run the rules.
Good. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I chuckled when I saw the